Hello. The title of my reading is Drown Yourself in This Ocean of Love. And there's an image there which will be up for a few seconds that is a gesture that attempts to characterize the theme. I call the image fourth dimensional beheading via chiastic throat lump, aka hyperglobus. And, well, you'll see, beheading, throat lump are recurring themes somehow in my writing. I have three epigraphs. The first from 13th century mystic Hadewijch, who writes, "The abyss into which she hurls me is deeper than the sea." The second from the Persian poet Hafiz, "I'll make my eye an ocean and cast patience into the desert, and in this work I will cast my heart into the ocean." And lastly from Meher Baba, "Man will be dislodged again and again from his illusory shelters by fresh and irresistible waves of life, and will invite upon himself fresh forms of suffering by seeking to protect his separative existence through escape." So, Marcus, can we just change the image? Yeah. My presentation has 7 parts, after which there'll be a short music video which will be shown in the interim between the two presentations this evening. 1. Ocean Seeping Eyes. Sunk in memory of eyes, world is turning marine. Too drunk to talk about it, I swim now in pure drowning, drinking in the sinless delight of underwater sighs, so dark and green. Deeper into themselves the orbs flow, a sponge from beyond. Vision is soaking all things into seeing, ocularizing every lucid surface into blue, self-observant glows. It is obvious now why you are not here, for the express purpose of seeing you everywhere, of plunging my whole threefold body faster through the pupil portal without fear. Any who see what is happening will faint. Whoever comes across this uneasy, incommunicable gazing will have no idea what to think, no image at all to paint. I see no way back. To where? What way or method for turning round is possible for a coral-boned being, a sunken ember of soul flame bubbling itself away in spiral spheres of air? He was seen once, when you never stopped looking. Now his eyes are liquefying all things in the sun of that glare, inflaming the earth into a cauldron sea, this long, turbulent cooking. No wonder I sink to depths, fly far below. The air above is too hot to breathe, and were it possible to survive the inverse journey, there would be nothing, no place to go. I fear I fail to remember. I forget. Everything is twisted into simplest horror. Not this, not this. All is fog omnipresent, one far unscalable diaphanous net. Always further I remember, far too much. Across horizons this eye intersects within itself more than will be known. Inside the oblique sphere of every line our glances touch. Forget that I never not knew. Forget me. So far too long have I already lingered, am lingering still on the shore as if it were not, as if it were not itself the sea. Now dive on the count of 3 to the bottom of tears. Leap into the black starlight of the nearest far, the abysmal ocean of love swimming beyond itself under all fears. Less I remember, more I know. Sunk the mic. Okay. Less I remember, more I know. All things are far too clear, too obvious to think about, suffused with a blinding candor, like death coming to a victim right before the final blow. There, where all speaks without me, there, Here only one thing to do, burning forever in the midst of all else. Weep tears on its unimaginable feet and dry them with our hair. It is not written, he who writes, on the day you at last meet him, it will still be the first, in faraway newness past fantasy, on an earth lit by itself, moon-like beneath suns of nights. My eyes are submarine caverns, seeping what they cannot see. Are your limbs anemones? If they are, what is the chance of understanding them, or ever again falling asleep? There is also music in this sunken, floating tomb. It sounds like a spiral mountain or a crystal storm or organ fugues conducted to a pale embryo in our dark mother's womb. If only the caverns could talk, these void spheres speak. If only my eyes comprehended all they project, saw the cinema of each atom, all suns and galaxies, instead they leak. I see no space for a real kiss here, no truth. For lifetimes we grope in speechless caverns, finding less than oneself to eat, tasting nothing other than the dull sting of my own tooth. Still you are here, silent in the blacker cave of blackness that speaks a name, as if I care what anyone thinks, as if anyone has understanding of what is never the same. The drops that keep me up forever are like shimmering gems. By losing all of them, I will eventually impossibly win, namely, overflow with wine more drunk than Rumi for Shams. Until then, you will have to listen to me, or not, and just walk on, not worrying at all, much less about what babbles, drowning in its own breath down near the bottom of this sea. Second part is called Drowning Sorrow. So the issue here tonight, everywhere, is the imperative to drown yourself in this ocean of love. It is no less a question than a demand, than a command, a question that commands. A question that commands, a command that questions. Are you drowning? Drown. Drown? Am I drowning? I am. Meher Baba writes, the hidden depths of the ocean of life can only be gauged by sounding the heart. He who speculates from the shore about the ocean shall know only its surface, but he who would know the depths of the ocean must be willing to plunge into it. There cannot be any compromise. There is no room for any compromise. You must drown yourself completely. If you cannot bear to drown yourself, then there is compromise. There cannot be any compromise. Drown yourself in this ocean of love. You have heard it before, and you know that it is true. And it is already underway. It is too late. We are already too far from the shore. Ever since I was born, says Choran, that since has a resonance so dreadful to my ears, it has become unendurable. At the point of drowning, non-difference between breathing and holding one's breath, this is where the ocean is found, where it is too close to not be everywhere. The sea in oneself and oneself in the sea. Is there anything that exists, moves, thinks, any breath at all except by drowning? Again, Meher Baba says, we are only aware of our breathing when we exert ourselves. Then we come to know just how vital our breath is for life. Compared to your breathing, God is infinitely nearer to you. When we are unconscious of our breathing, how can we become conscious of God, who is so very near to us? When one is about to drown, he becomes aware of his breath. Therefore, to experience God, one must drown in the ocean of divinity. We say a lot of things and try to understand them, but to be conscious of our real existence, we must drown in the ocean of divine love. Drowning and waking. Have you ever had a dream that has not drowned you? The point of drowning is a special kind of leap or fall out of oneself into something entering you from elsewhere, from beyond. In Dante's Paradiso, after reaching the summit of the earthly paradise, the pilgrim enters paradise, the celestial paradise, and he compares this step, which is the step of passing beyond the human, transhumanar. Dante is the one who coins that term, to go beyond the human. And he narrates this transformation and the impossibility of narrating it by comparing himself to Glaucus, who's a figure from Greek myth that you may know from Ovid, who it's a beautiful stories of fishermen who catches fish. He places them on the shore. The fish eat of the grass that is nearby, and they miraculously resurrect and leap back into the sea. So Glaucus is struck with wonder and a desperate desire to know the secret of this herb, this grass. He says according to Ovid, he says, "I am stunned and stilled. It takes me long before I probe the cause of this." Eventually he eats of the grass, and he's transformed into a sea god. So question, desire, swallowing, drowning as swallowing, being swallowed by sorrow, or more generally, some form of negativity, the desire to know. Transhumanar, to pass beyond the human as a leaping by drowning into the cloud of unknowing. So now I'll give you some more prose, an excursus on mystical sorrow. The definition of perfect sorrow in the cloud of unknowing goes as follows. All men have grounds for sorrow. Matter of sorrow is what it says in the original text. But most especially, he feels grounds for sorrow who knows and feels that he is. In comparison to this sorrow, all other kinds of sorrow are like play. For he can truly and really sorrow who knows and feels not only what he is, but that he is. And whoever has not felt this sorrow, he may sorrow, because he has never yet felt perfect sorrow. So you can sorrow over the definition if you haven't experienced the sorrow itself. There's a connection here to the color green that I want to highlight, which is being presented to you in the image. There's a sense, green signifies life, greenness, fertility, but it also is associated with death, and particularly the emotion, being in a state of envy, which is a kind of anti-love. So both, but it's also the color of the heart, of longing, so kind of love and anti-love. And there's a sense in which this sorrow is, let's just say, the sort of mystical interfaciality of this greenness as an emotional or affective state, has to do with the sense in which the sorrow of being, the sorrow that one is a kind of envy, a sort of auto-envy, a kind of hatred of one's own being, that is also, of course, indistinguishable from a longing. That is the positive meaning of green, of a longing for something impossible. The sorrow of being is the unavoidable downward passage, like Dante's path through hell, through which knowledge becomes, the way it actually comes to life. Just as dialectical understanding requires not simply the posing of questions, but their experience, an actual feeling of the negativity of the question. So is essential sorrow. So is sorrow. So is sorrow necessary for real knowledge. That is knowledge that touches the known via realization in specific experience. It says in Ecclesiastes, he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. And so the obverse is true. He who does not increase sorrow does not increase knowledge. One must sink beyond oneself. In other words, the sorrow of being is more than mystical affect, precisely in its intersection with the identity of knowledge and realization that is essential to mystical experience and discourse. Mysticism's being defined not by thinking, but rather by contemplation as that which has what meditation seeks. Essential sorrow is the open ground of contemplation, the epistemological portal through which thought enters the known. This is confirmed in the way mystical discourse characteristically holds knowledge within the domain of fundamental sorrow, not merely to chasten, but to perfect it, at once to free knowledge from the mirage of world mastery and to keep knowledge radically open to its own intensive reality. Let us die, then, and enter this darkness, writes Bonaventure. Let us silence all our cares, desires, and imaginings. Mystical sorrow is a negative insistence on unitive knowledge, the dark drive not to illuminate, but to actually find the identity of knower and known, to exit the domain of identification with appearance and become the body of truth. It pertains fundamentally to the impulse for epistemological self-purgation, the will to eliminate the roots of falsehood from one's own being, to practice understanding as ascesis and self-negation. Mystical sorrow fuels the burning condition of heart that at once fuses all knowledge to the principle of scientia, to truth as necessarily immanent to its understanding, and ceaselessly insists, in the face of the cosmic or divine limitlessness, on the profound necessity of a knowledge beyond knowledge, the unclosable finality of a science beyond being. The sorrow of being accordingly holds a special relevance to crises of scientific limits, the terror of impassable epistemological vistas. You may remember from Lovecraft, he says human emotion has no bearing in the cosmos, when of course his art is precisely to expose us to this domain in which it has a kind of absolute bearing. Before them, it negatively asserts another way out, the viability of a direct, pathless path to limitless reality. Correlatively, the sorrow of being as ineradicable pan-dilemma speaks no less significantly to the universal value of general diurnal discontent, reclaiming it as a negative index of an immanent beyond. As Meher Baba says, the condition of the world, the strife and uncertainty that is everywhere, the general dissatisfaction with and rebellion against any and every situation, shows that the ideal of material perfection is an empty dream and proves the existence of an eternal reality beyond materiality. Sorrow of being belongs at once to otherworldly spiritual intention and to this worldly worry, profoundly flattening both within one universal emergency of being. In short, the reality of sorrow is nothing other than being's own logic, creatively canceling in one movement all deferrals of transcendence, what Nietzsche criticizes as, quote, burying one's head in the sand of heavenly things, and every dream of materialism in desperate favor of the infinite real. Its telos is thus neither achievement nor comfortable consolation, but the intensive infinitization of arriving search, as if to find that reality itself is totally mystical. The cloud of unknowing's factical definition of perfect sorrow furnishes a principle of revolution against creationism, not only the creationism that is familiar to us from religious discourse, but creationism as the more general and insidious orientation towards thinking of oneself, along with everything else, as somehow an effect or product of a broader, expansive universe, a grand out there whose reality is prior to and fundamentally independent of one's own. This belief in and attitude towards the world as an autonomous reality, which is and must be whether one is or not, is inseparable from the general concept of the subject as an individuated entity that is subject of the world and its own event within it. Belief in the world is a correlate of the fraud of givenness, or yØurself. The subject on this view is something produced or created by and within the universe in an uncanny event of oneself that is generically identified with birth. Merleau-Ponty says, to be born is both to be born of the world and to be born into the world. Blind acceptance of this uncanniness, whether narrated as chance, celebrated as natalism, or elided within a discursive we, founds the false autonomy of narrow selfhoods, the minimal lives of beings for whom living is constituted by consuming or possessing, by dispending the so-called gift of being. As Choron indicates, it is the fastening of individual being to birth that grounds its limitation. If attachment is an evil, we must look for its cause in the scandal of birth, for to be born is to be attached. Detachment, then, should apply itself to getting rid of the traces of this scandal, the most serious and intolerable of all. The unavoidable error of attachment, which every attempt to be someone confesses, and whose impulse infects the very idea of death, is that there is someone here in need of having a life in the first place, a for whom, by whom of being that every day assumes the excruciating task of continually interrupting the superessential or divine wirelessness of reality. The sorrow of being, experienced and realized as an ineradicable fact, something that simply won't go away, operates as the ruthless grace of the real, which eradicates and exhausts the essential lie of this indigence, venting the voidal substance of identity and opening the unground into which not only moral but metaphysical responsibility leaps. The subject superiorly receptive to the call of this perfect sorrow is precisely the one who freely lets itself as subject be thrown into its depths, exercising and exercising itself in a liberatory act of spontaneous apophatic adventure, a paradisical leap beautifully imagined by Don Quixote in defense of poetic truth. I have a longish passage from Cervantes that I'll skip, but long story short, the knight is told that in order to save the princess, he must dive into this horrible black pitch. And without thinking for a second, without the slightest hesitation, without stopping to take off his armor, he's already in there. And the moment he makes that leap, he finds himself in this, beautiful paradisical place. Throwing himself into the black liquid in immediate continuity with the sorrowful voice that evokes his very indeterminacy, the knight embodies the metapersonal and hyper-desirous subject who obliterates or short-circuits melancholia by escaping through the very identity that melancholy is for. Similarly, to burrow thought into the event of oneself and push philosophically through it requires intensifying beyond its own internal self-constituting limit the kind of cosmic dependency which holds identity on the shore, and which is currently the familiar staple of scientific wonder. We are stardust. We may be, but I will not be. As the cloud of unknowing's flirtation with refusal of the gift of being exemplifies, overcoming this subject creationism, or kind of secular scientific creationism, overcoming this is the essential task of mysticism. From Pseudo-Dionysius's description of becoming neither oneself nor someone else, to Meister Eckhart's identification of the human essence as primordially above God. Rather than viewing this imperative only existentially as one of the passions of facticity, let us seize it as direct evidence that, as the American sage Vernon Howard says, a body came into the world, but it wasn't you. In sum, our fundamental need for escape, the hopeless and helpless desire to get out of oneself, that is, to break that most radical and unalterably binding of chains, the fact that the I, moi, is oneself, soi-même, is not some outrageous psychological drama, but a true index that one is indeed not oneself, but something more and other than one's proper being, a someone more real than anything else who is discoverable all of a sudden when one least knows where one is bound. Rumi says, that man is truly successful who is drowned in that sigh. Okay, back to some verses now. Section 3 is entitled Pneumenon. These are short poems that I write on my phone. Pressed under oceans of glass, specimen of love, no more sun, nor air, nor grass, no return above. The one for whom I left this world long ago left me. Lost in the heart of the desert, I drown in the sea. You take yourself for a spin, try to feel alive, while the ocean lies within, drowning in a sigh. Burning in flames of remembrance, I scream without sound. All who see me may point and say, look where someone drowned. Undersea crystal cavern, located through stars, this life become its prison, a breath now its bars. With one sip from the cup of void, I defy all years, all plans of God, nature, and man, I drown in one tear. To leave all and follow none, outside spaces see, to stay right here and meet one inside the edge of me. In the well of tears was born a fish with one eye, hooked now by the rose's thorn, it swims through the sky. Swallowing still the lozenge, sweet that swallows me, gulping prayers of a Stonehenge sunk beneath the sea. Upon the mountain I saw you, far beneath the sea. Under ocean I felt you, on the highest peak. The moment you laughed at my tears, hopelessness was lost. The ocean sank, and the black moon to the earth was tossed. This tiny cell, my ocean, bigger than the world, round it origin and end, like a spiral curled. Spiral evisceration of the blinded eye, oceanic dilation of the weeping sky. To be without you is hell. To be with you, death. My life is both at once, being in and out of breath. A life living by surrender of all that is alive, a sigh flying oceans under, the highest summit dive. Threw myself from way up high and flew back to me, drowned myself in the black sky and became the sea. I fly the seas of dreams for you. I swim all the skies, and nowhere do you appear, not even in your eyes. Breath is so drowned in your name, all air is marine, space the surface of a sea, time a sunk machine. When at last this love breaks me, and desire is dead, your word will roar like the sea from my severed head. Heart out of my body swam, taking all with it, elsewhere in the sea of under suns unlit. Fourth section is a fantasy of a form of death, and it's called Split into One. Our cruel tormentors, for who knows what reason, placed us in the same cell. Maybe it was laziness or some kind of a joke, perhaps to see what two people like us would do in a single cage. The reasons do not matter, all the more since our imprisoners are totally clueless as to the real nature of matter and reason. How perfectly we fooled them all, finding in their cluelessness the first clue to escape, the way of squeezing ourselves through a narrow gate of torment into this ever-new paradise of never escaping. On the first day we lay prostrate in silence, wondering side by side why either of us had been brought there, why we had been placed together, and simply wondering. The astounding situation made it both hard and easy to look into each other's eyes. Chained on opposite sides of the room with about 3 meters of stony floor between us, close enough for looking to feel like touching, and not touching to see like looking. Silence, a daydream of mute solar pain turning the whole world to night. On the second day, we had a conversation about our imprisonment, many questions and answers as to what was happening and why. It was calmly all very confusing. The easy, almost casual inescapability of being proximately chained together made all of the explanations seem superficial and somewhat meaningless. What did it matter what we said? Still, just after the last glow of the setting sun had left the one small high window, we solved the mystery of our imprisonment. The answer was clear and simple, painfully and almost comically obvious. Fairly innocent of our respective charges of heresy, we were indeed both guilty of the worst crime, freedom. Such was the unquestionable structure of our good fortune, to be imprisoned for different reasons at the same time for the sin of freedom. On the third day, either nothing happened or we do not remember what happened, most likely nothing. On the fourth day, the seriousness of the situation began to really sink in. There was talk in the prison about the inquisitor's planned arrival, gossip about his unpredictable methods, and a general restlessness in the atmosphere. We started noticing uselessly meaningful superfluous details about each other, like the special way your feet turned outward when you slept. It must have been on this day that we started to feel the need to develop our own language, spontaneous gesture syntax of the irreparably trapped. On the fifth day, pendulum swinging from the previous, we found relief in playing a winking game. There being nothing really to say, our four eyes escaped the said and sported idiotically in pure saying. That was fun, especially when we completely forgot that we were playing and lost all sense of where we were by paying such perfect attention to the nothing we actually are. On the sixth day, we saw that the winking game had the potential to become precisely the kind of language our imprisonment needed, a truly solitary language that could only be spoken together, and which would serve less for communication than for the intelligible magnification of silence. This would become a language of pure, deep words, words unnetted from syntax and capable at any moment of recursively reflecting themselves into stopped time, brightest black void. The grammar of this language cannot properly be described, especially retrospectively. The rules now remain in memory as dim details of the clearest of dreams. I know we understood them and never would have escaped if we did not, but now the real game has taken over everything, starting with its own rules. It is precisely because we understood the rules of our secret language of escape so perfectly that we can at best barely remember them, because our escape is so real that it will never stop escaping escape itself. Every spare minute on the sixth day and night were spent theorizing and tinkering with the grammar of this hyper-lonesome gaze language. Eventually the night overtook the darkness of our pupils, and all seemed lost and spoken in the vast space of a great eye. On the seventh day, we were nicknamed the Lovers by one of the prison guards. He had a large, ugly face and a menacing demeanor, but he was not cruel. We were delighted by the nickname, not because it was true, but because it provided the perfect veil and truest fiction beneath which to work out our escape, to bring down on our heads the most perfect cruelty. Neither at their best nor at their worst do people have any idea what they are talking about. On the eighth day, we became a living diptych, capable of presenting two independent faces to the world and also shutting the entire universe into the lucid oblivion of that pure pupil-to-pupil seeing and mouth-to-mouth speaking. According to laws that the human mind cannot understand, this gave us the aslant power to steer worldly events around the spiral pillar of our unconcerned directness, the swerving rectitude of sincere vision. Just as individual reality is diurnally rebooted via the cycle of sleeping and waking, so we steered general reality by opening and shutting the panels of ourselves using the blessed hinges of wink words. Inverting appearances around the still point of the invisible eye, we closed the diptych in openness during the day and held it open in closedness by night. No one could tell, sometimes not even ourselves, but from this day forward, we remained always more asleep in waking and more awake in sleep. On the ninth day, the tiny surchaotic shifts and displacements introduced from or into reality by the escape trap of our communion began to take miraculous effect. We counted the days of our imprisonment, estimated the arrival of the Inquisitor, and sat in stunned silence, marveling over the fact that truth indeed keeps its promises. On the 10th day, we talked about the future. The conversation almost turned into an argument until we remembered that we were talking about nothing. On the 11th day, they took us individually to different rooms for no apparent reason. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Late at night, the Inquisitor came. On the 12th day, the examination and trial took place. After a few regular formalities, the poetry reading started. The most beautiful verse one had ever heard, accompanied by a gentle music and total undeniable power like a waterfall. Sometimes the poetry turned extremely funny, somehow without destroying its epic and apocalyptic dimension. It was like being inside a scene of a movie about a movie while it was being shot and projected at once. On the 13th day, we entered paradise by not exiting it. This is how it happened. Since the tortures of the previous day did not work, they had planned to execute us in the usual fashion. But then our favorite jailer, the ugly one with the menacing demeanor, who was not cruel, started laughing and bragging like he was drunk, threatening to deny God and break the law if the judge did not satisfy justice and give the crowd of cowards a divine spectacle of violent goodness specifically suited to the lovers. Reality is true, good, and beautiful, he argued, drawing upon some philosophical reserve, a secret presence of Platonism, perhaps, in his Mediterranean peasant blood. Even they who crucified the God-man, he said, took matters into their own hands in a way that no one will ever forget. Then, after a pregnant silence, our most noble and gracious Inquisitor agreed. What to say? Not only that, but he unequivocally commanded our exact wish, simultaneous decapitation and subsequent sewing of our necks together, so that two hearts are now still and forever swimming through each other in a single, all-encompassing blood. I hereby decree, he spoke loudly in supreme, cold calmness, that these two heretics be now split into one. Fifth section is on bewilderment. Such is the beautifully black mirror pupil of bewilderment that sends one into oceanic spin. As per the Sufi understanding of hayra, bewilderment, in connection with hira, which means whirlpool, the perplexity of a swirling reality inseparable from one's own being. Ecstasy is never a matter of escape from the real, but of the feeling of complicity with something that is too real. So bewilderment, which is to be rigorously distinguished from intellectual confusion, is, as Ibn Arabi explains, the dead-end exit which leads all the way to the absolute. Rational speculation leads to bewilderment, and theophany, or revelation, leads to bewilderment, he says. There is nothing but a bewildered one. There is nothing exercising properties but bewilderment. There is nothing but Allah. Now we have a list that I wrote, infinitives and imperatives on bewilderment. To perish with every breath in overwhelming astonishment. To be so far gone that you never arrived. Have no idea. To be so clueless that every clue is itself eternally stunned by its own inexistence. Obliterate multiverses by means of bewilderment. Become so lost in disbelief that everything is absolutely unintelligibly true. Wonder so deeply why anything is happening at all that it never did. Mercilessly send all your questions back to the omnipresent front lines. Fail to meet me for fear of being swallowed alive by an enormous question. Fall into the gaping abyss under your feet until you shoot up out of the ground. Writhe in unknowing. Live in the midst of continual, well-coordinated, all-out attacks upon everything you ever felt or thought was true. to always already be inexplicably pierced by yet another incommunicable sorrow. Watch the world vanish like mist before the glorious sun of secret maximal confusion. Well, it works both ways. Leave me behind so fast that you bump into me in infinite regress. To give everyone a look that shows what they are in for. Lay your life aside in favor of becoming a cosmically autophagous query. See human knowledge for what it is, a messy mass of poorly formulated search terms. Drink wine of bewilderment until the tears wash away your face. To erase every trace of yourself with a free lifetime supply of the ointment of mystification. Think about something by evaporating the thought. Act in a way that effectively accuses everyone of insufficient astonishment. Follow yourself off the cliff of total bafflement. Leap for joy into spontaneous senseless distress like a child into the arms of its mother. Indulge profoundly in the pleasure of forgetting everything people say. Offer everything as a reward to anyone who successfully steals all your answers. Infinitely reverse the ontological order of answer and question. Immediately becoming capable of following any directions other than the irrepressible hunch that you are absolutely and hopelessly lost. Dive into delightful epistemological despair past the point of really needing to do away with yourself. Abandon interconnection to all persons who actually think they know what they are talking about. Exploit your friends to bust all of you out of the prison of knowledge. Deliberately refuse to know, no matter what the world offers you. Develop courage for greater and greater bewilderment by remembering all who have died in the depths of ignorance. To wonder why one ever bothered to. Fail to believe how you ever fell for it. Make no difference between small and great matters that do not make sense. Know not what to do, think, feel, or say. Place no secret hope in your absolute bewilderment. Figure out a way off the island of being that does not involve figuring it out. Suspect everything. Renounce your bewilderment for nothing except greater and greater bewilderment. Know so little that the whole universe flocks to you for meaningless questions. To let no light ever escape the black hole of your non-knowledge. Offer no explanations, give nothing away. Die of unknowing. Remain unintelligible, especially to omniscience. Thrive by robbing yourself in the apophatic alleys of radically imminent auto-blindness. Eclipse all knowing in the perfect pitch blackness of your own pupil. Wonder why until why itself never made any sense in the first place. Expose your whole system to the plague of inexplicability. Hypothetically blame everything on everything in order to be even more astonished by all that remains unaccounted for. Crack open your skull like lightning on the stone of pure astonishment. Bask in the glory of bewilderment. So now I have two short pieces. Are we okay for time? We have 10 minutes, even less. We're okay. Okay. So 6 is called 40,000, like 40,000 leagues under the sea. But it's 40,000 nights of night, walking awake in corridors of darkness, talking by who knows what light, how there is no we. Down here there is nothing to see, and a little further on, less. Miraculous, deeper blackening of blindness. Now the dark becomes so strong that its boundless expanse collapses into spiral, a one-way, optionless maze like the inner sense of a totally beautiful tress. Tighter and tighter the way goes down grows, with us following it, inversely climbing the suspension of a supremely failing fall. Nearly wiggling our 4-in-1 steps, there is barely any room to talk, only space to breathe little whispers, abandoning bipedalism for worm swimming with the soul's own slowness. Two impossible beings perversely squeezed into a single empty shell path. Twisting into double helix, corkscrewing in mutual spiral infestation, There is no other way. Too narrow even for thought to turn back. The further we slinks forward, this dual singular twin or auto-facing dyad, the longer it is, stretching back forwards via longing into the very dimension of ever-lengthening night. Oh no, the asymptotic enclosure, desired space of all desire, will only fulfill when mouths will only fulfill us, when mouths endlessly silence each other at the end into one suffocating, self-breathing breath. When no longer ever having been feet arrive into forever remaining tails trailing along the very beginning. When constricted hearts endure so desperately the slowest consummation of complete shared consumption. This night is too long, oh yes. And the last poem from, just calling it End. The title could be As If. As if there is any time left to fret or scream over this sad world, which knows nothing of the paradise it is, this life, not for a second real enough even to deny. As if my worn-out heart has not already despaired again for the last time and let the worst do the worst, watching corpses bury corpses just for the fun of it. As if the sigh you thought you lost did not return before the next from the widest sphere and joining it infinitely accelerate the shrinking of the very cosmos. As if these and all other things were not already true. Forever abandoned in the victory no one can win. Abyss where falling is a blow from which none recover. So let us listen rather to what neither has nor will occur, to what never entered the world, and solely by not entering made a strange appearance around us. So let us point to the halos over each other's heads, precisely where their brilliance is no different from the supreme impossibility of that pointing. So let us do everything at once while there's still time. Otherwise, I see no reason for keeping up appearances, for bothering to be, for taking even my last breath. Thank you. The music is by Robbie Basho, and it's a hymn for the goddess of the rose, is what I understand. Yeah, it's a mashup. It's a music video. You can do it in 5 minutes.